Hey everyone, today I'm going to cover the topic of design thinking. So let me sort of motivate what design thinking actually means. What is the worst nightmare when you're building a product or a feature, right? Traditionally, we've always thought of this as if you build it, they will come. If you build a capability, there will be users. And the worst nightmare is no one comes. So a lot of startups fail not because they couldn't build the product, couldn't build the feature. They built something that had very little or no value, no users for what you're building. And I think that is the ultimate waste when you think from an engineering standpoint. Instead, what you want is to flip this. Instead of saying, if you build it, they will come. If they come, we will build it. So how do you really make sure that what you're building is going to align such that you can verify and ensure that what you're building essentially is going to be valuable and it's worth the effort? This is where design thinking actually comes in. So what is design thinking? It's basically a human-centered approach to innovation. And if you ignore the terminology, essentially it's really very straightforward in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. How do you capture the needs combined with ideas, combined with prototyping to quickly deliver and build out something, right? So think of this as the intersection of desirability, feasibility, viability. Desirability is what is needed. Feasibility is technically possible to actually build this out today or in the foreseeable future. And viability is that it's likely to become a sustainable business model. It's not a one-off. So that's really what design thinking is, how to invest in these three aspects upfront to make sure that what you're building is at the intersection of desirability, viability, feasibility. Now, the topic of design thinking is something that has been around for a while, and different terminologies exist, different programs exist. In fact, Stanford has courses on design thinking, and so do many universities. Give a very interesting example from Intuit. Intuit follows design thinking. In fact, it's one of the best places that I've seen where design thinking is followed in a very, I would say, across the company, across all the teams. And there's something called as CDI, customer driven innovation. So, it's referred to as customer driven innovation, very similar concept to what we saw. It's basically an intersection of an unsolved customer problem that we and those around us are able to solve. So unsolved need that we can solve, and we can build a durable competitive advantage. So that's the crux of design thinking. Now, how do you go about with the process? And again, there's no single golden rule. I'm going to take you through a few different, I would say, playbooks that I have found very, very useful in this context. So one playbook here, um, again, using Intuit, and this is something that used, is to use something similar before Intuit, but at Intuit now I learned the terminology behind this. This is D for D, design for delight. It's a combination of deep customer empathy combined with this exercise of going broad to go narrow, combined with rapid experimentation, and sort of this loop such that you're understanding the problem, trying to figure out what the different solutions are, zeroing down into a solution, applying it, and rapidly experimenting. That was really what D4D stood for. Another similar concept, or just to give you a flavor, at IDEO, they put it basically as framing a question, gathering inspiration, generating ideas, making ideas tangible, testing it out, and sharing the story. More or less, you can call it anything, but more or less these steps are, you start with the question, right? That is, what do customers need, go with respect to what's referred to as gathering inspiration, observing, what, how the customers are using the product, where they're getting stuck, where the journey is today. So in some sense, frame a question, really go and understand what's happening out there, generate ideas of what can be done. They cannot be just a single idea. Typically generate many more ideas. And you then take, among them a subset, make a quick prototype. And again, prototype here doesn't mean you build the whole software out. It could be, a wireframe. It could be a visual flow. It could be something that allows you to test out the cheapest way to test out, right? Test out your learning. And then really sort of the last part is, as you then iterate on it, sharing with others, it basically helps arrive or helps get to the right solution, right? This is a very interesting way to put things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover a couple of concrete playbooks that you can potentially apply in this journey. So the first playbook, coming again from Intuit, is basically what's referred to as follow me home. And what this basically does is, in some sense, understanding what the customer or how the customer is actually using the product, right? So the way it works is that you typically, what follow me home really sort of, again, not in a creepy way, but really spending time or setting up time with the customer, finding a real customer, going where the customer is using the product, or like, if you're, let's say, a product used by DevOps or operational folks, like really sort of, trying to set up time to go in, their offices, looking at, what all screens do they have, how are they typically using not just your product, but what does the flow look like overall. And as in that process, really sort of focusing on understanding, why they are doing a few things, right? Periodically asking them questions. So one of the key things here is it's not an interview. A classic mistake I have seen is, you basically use this as an interview. Rather, you focus on looking for real behaviors, listening on what they are asking and or what they are sort of saying or doing during that process. And your key thing is to ask the why questions. Why did they do that step? Why did they do it in a specific form? That's it. So follow me home's tremendously valuable, especially when you're trying to understand for your existing feature, for existing product, or even for new products, looking at how it's done today. So something which is extremely valuable to do. Another playbook is the ability to articulate the customer need. And this is another aspect which really clarifies what we are trying to build. And this is written from the context of the customer. So the template here is something along the lines that, I am and you define who you are as customer. So I am a, data ops, or I'm a software developer, whoever is the customer persona, and I am trying to, whatever goal I'm trying to accomplish, right? Manage multiple big data applications or track the cost for big data applications, right? Then the next piece is but. So what's coming in the way? But there are way too many applications, way too many different environments. Gathering this data, combining them in a tangible form is extremely difficult, right? So that's the barrier, right? And the because part here essentially could be that because information that is coming in needs to be accumulated, needs to be, the rates keep changing, the budgets may not be well defined. So really building out some kind of a cost solution, right? And again, this is a contrived problem, just to give you an idea. And the last part here is, which makes me feel typically, this is another important part, which is as a user, how would the user feel? So if they are not able to track costs in this example we are defining, then that makes them feel to the like not so powerful, right? Potentially helpless. So these are the kinds of things that really help you understand both the what, what's coming in the way, and also how they must be feeling. Because end of the day, this is an equally important part in the product and feature building. So architecting the customer need using a template of this form really helps clarify what's going on. Now, corresponding to this is articulating the ideal state. So we just talked about what the customer is going through. You can now continue that forward and basically say, in a perfect world, right, they should be able to get this information, get the building details in real time with alerts set up, right? Um, in a real world. So this is basically, again, sort of putting it in the user's context. And the biggest benefit to me is, and again, what would be the benefit to the user? The user here would not either never miss out on potentially leveraging their dollars in the most effective form, right? Which makes them feel empowered, which makes them feel powerful. So these aspects, these exercises are good, good clarifying. Oftentimes we jump straight into the solution. We jump straight into, what, how do we want to make it happen, or what the features are. But this is even one step before that, right? The third piece here essentially is, now that you have defined the problem, right, there are aspects of the solution. So there may be multiple solutions. So it's called go broad to go narrow, right? Or even within a solution, there may be multiple different permutations. And this is a very important part in terms of, if you put all the building blocks involved, right, and you can think of these as post-its, put them into 4 buckets, right? Or think of this as a 2x2. Crucial for success, not crucial for success, proven true, not proven true, right? So in this structure, you would basically put in, like, for instance, a great UI. Yes, it is crucial for success, but it's more of, potentially that can be proven out, right? Features of, gathering data, crucial for success, proven out. You can get, hopefully there are APIs, or potentially it becomes like not proven out. Maybe the APIs don't exist, or the granularity of the APIs don't exist. You get the picture. So essentially, once you can build this out in, or all the building blocks of your feature, you can put them in the quadrants. What you get on the in the right top quadrant is what's referred to as leap of faith assumptions, things that need to happen but are not proven out. And this is where, from the standpoint of implementation or building the feature, you need to think of this as an hypothesis and build towards eliminating the hypothesis. So an hypothesis statement, this is now internal, internally how we are tracking what these unknowns are, right? So hypothesis essentially would be, if we build a capability, for instance, to gather billing usage information, right, in real time, then essentially the ability to combine and use that information to generate valuable insights, right? And which we will measure by what would be the success criteria. When would we think that, so real time means what? Is it nanoseconds? Is it, kind of within an hour? If it's like, really, really real time, what are you going to do with it, right? Is the granularity correct? So the measurement, which we will measure by, essentially becomes critical to clarify. Again, oftentimes we do these, but not really know what the ultimate end goal is for that specific hypothesis. And the success metric here, um, and here the question would be, this could basically define that, okay, success metric here is if we could do it for n number of clusters, or if we could do it for specific environments, a single environment, that would be the success metric. And again, this is a contrived example, but it gives you the picture. Really a systematic approach. Once you have nailed down, this now becomes the starting point, again, in the design thinking itself, which is what are the leap of faith assumptions? And for each assumption, what are we doing to mitigate these hypothesis statements out? So So takeaways, applying design thinking to better understanding the unmet needs. Like I said, again, going back, the biggest nightmare is you build something nobody cares, nobody uses. You don't want to do that. Reduces the risk associated with launching new products. And clearly one of the biggest advantages also is the ability to generate solutions that are revolutionary, not just incremental. Because when you do go broad to go narrow, you actually think of solutions very, very differently. You don't necessarily have to box yourself into, okay, this is the feature that I'm going to build or can build. It's very important to understand what needs to be built, not what can be built, right? Oftentimes, from a bottom up standpoint, I've seen engineers focus on, okay, this is how I can build it, but not really caring or thinking much about, is that what is needed to be built? Some of the playbooks here to guide you through: follow me homes, really making sure that we are not hypothesizing the wrong problem. This is where you get to see the user in action, being able to articulate your template for need and ideal state. And really the last part of hypothesis slash leap of faith assumptions is something that I would basically say is extremely valuable, especially if you're thinking of big projects, big features. The whole intent here would be to front load such that every sprint you're taking away some assumptions off the mix. Done in an ad hoc fashion, by default, you would just do with things which are known, and then eventually several sprints down the line realize that this one assumption that we could maybe collect the data is completely wrong, or we have to invest significantly to even build that capability out. So assignment, folks, for an existing product feature that you are developing, write this thing down. Using the template is the best way to practice. Think about what's the need, what's the ideal state, what are the leap of faith assumptions, and the hypothesis that you're building out. So that would, again, help you put this whole thing in context. See you guys for the next, see you in the next episode.